Welcome to the Monday Monologue. And gotta say, guys, I've been on the struggle bus for a couple of weeks with my projects. And I guess you go through highs and lows in this hobby where, sometimes like everything you do turns out gold. And then you have those weeks where everything you touch is just garbage. And I've been having one of those just fail weeks. I'm not sure what's going on. So anyway, at least I'm learning stuff from this. And even if I'm not, hey, some of this stuff still is a little baffling. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly how all this stuff interrelates. But hopefully I'm kind of bringing y'all along in this process of learning how this all works and interrelates to each other. So probably one of the biggest things that I've learned recently is what I've learned from this color preamp and about how to create harmonic distortion, the good kind, and then how to preserve it and have it not fluctuate with the volume level. Because I feel like that the fluctuation and distortion with the volume level impacts the volumes that we then listen to our music, because we get fooled by the distortion into thinking that the music has to be loud to be enjoyable. So learned a lot from that. I want to try implementing that on my 2A3 amp when I build that, which I've got a cool new design that I found that's a copy of a audio note amplifier from a long time ago. So anyway, that's coming up. 300B. I did some studying of the data sheets and drawing some load lines and stuff, and I thought, aha, I need to bias these hotter. I need to put a smaller cathode resistor, which will lower the bias voltage, which will then run the tubes hotter and potentially in a more linear place that should be easier for the front end to drive. So got some new resistors, these 25 watt chassis mount guys. They're not super expensive, but they're not cheap, and they're about $6 or $7 a piece. So I spent about $30, $35 with shipping to get some resistors, and I was all excited. And I started swapping these in and saw the voltage coming down on the grid, or the cathode. Basically, it is the grid, and thought, this is going to be great. This is the direction I want to go. And then I put it on the audio analyzer suite, and just a total fail. I mean, it went from under 1% distortion, or right at 1% distortion through the meat of the range, to almost 3% distortion. And I don't know. I'm still baffled at what's going on there. But you know what? I'm just going to put it back like it was. This amp's always sounded good. Thought maybe I could improve it. So this was a fail. But I will show you what happened when I put these CV181 tubes in it. Okay, so here is the one win we had this week. I hadn't tested these CV181 tubes in my 300B amp on the audio analyzer suite. Even though the cathode resistor trials was not productive, trying these CV181 tubes was. And here was the result of that. And as you can see, nice low distortion. At 1 watt, we got a 0.5% of distortion. Got 3 watts at 1%. And then right there you can see it starts skyrocketing. That's probably about where it starts clipping. But we've got 6.5 watts at 1.3% distortion. So that's definitely improvement over what we previously saw. So this amp really seems to like these CV181 tubes. So at least putting those in was a win. I was pretty sure that having a little higher output driver tubes in this amp would improve things, and it did. And it sounds better. So if you built one of these, or you've got a 300B amp that uses 6S and 7 tubes, before these things are gone, get some of these CV181-Zs and match them with these 300B-Z tubes, and they just really sound good together. And I think they also look really cool together. It really gives this amp a cool look. So that was a win this week. The other thing that I've been experimenting with is some solid state stuff. And one of the things some people have said is, they're afraid of getting in here and working with this high voltage stuff. And I don't blame them. I mean, it is a little spooky, and you really got to stay focused, guys. I mean, I haven't been shocked by the high voltage DC, but, I understand people that are, afraid of that, and for good reason. So I thought some solid state projects would be fun, and I wanted to start experimenting around with some different options out there. And I got one of these little Class D amplifiers, and again, I made a mistake when I ordered this thing. This was only like a $15 little board, and it's got Bluetooth on it. It's got an RCA jack. It's also got a USB port in the front, and I was thinking this might be a cool way to build some powered speakers with some of those little 3-inch full-range drivers that I got. Well, I neglected to get the power supply that goes with this, which is just a laptop power supply, but for $10 there was another option on the order sheet to get the power supply that drives this. And so I looked through, I've got a pile of old laptop, power bricks, and the closest one I could find was a 15-volt one, which this thing will run between 15 and 19 volts. And when I powered it up with a 15-volt one, it all works, but it just doesn't have a lot of juice. It'll barely drive my RP600Ms at full volume, which I know most amps don't sound their best at full volume. And I also have learned that Class D amps, the power they put out is directly proportional to the voltage they're fed. And so I need to get a high amperage 19-volt brick to power this thing before I do any kind of reviews for that. So that content was a fail. Then I also tried this little Nelson Pass H2 harmonic distortion creation little circuit board that's got a couple of JFETs, I think. Anyway, I'll put a link in the description. Little board's like $8, and the stuff to populate it's pretty cheap, and it comes with the transistors that are rated and matched, and they tell you the voltage to set these little pots to and stuff. And it just runs off a little 12-volt wall wart. Doesn't even have to be a real high power one. I think this is like a 1 amp one, or maybe 1.5 amps. But anyway, it's probably even overkill for that. It probably didn't even take that much. So while I was playing with the color preamp, I plugged this thing in, and man, it's just distortion. I know it's supposed to create some distortion, but it was like the bad kind. So that didn't work like I was expecting it to. And then while I was testing this on the audio analyzer suite, tested this, and I realized that yes, it does what he says at 0.5 volts RMS. It puts out 1%. It creates 1% distortion, which is what you want. But then I'm thinking, how do you keep this thing at 0.5 volts RMS, and none of my gear runs off of 0.5 volts RMS input signal. It all runs off 2 RMS and above. So maybe it'll work with some of this stuff, but I don't know. Still trying to figure out this little electronic solid state world. So that's, again, I feel like I kind of failed there. And then when we were testing this thing, I ended up roasting the output potentiometer, which clearly wasn't rated high enough to be able to deal with the output of even this preamp. And so got one of those on order. I was hoping to have this thing just totally finished. I was in the last stage of the testing. Everything was going great. And then one of the channels goes dead, and then the other one pops too. And I spent an hour or two trying to figure out what even happened. And, on hindsight, it all makes sense about what happened and how it played out. And I hot smelling, that stuff that I was smelling when I was testing it this last time. And anyway, so I guess this was just a Monday monologue, more of a kind of a bitch and moan session that I've been just struggling, guys. I feel like sometimes I just hit it out of the park, hit it out of the park, hit it out of the park. And then I have a couple of weeks like this where like everything I touch goes to crap. So I'm sure things are going to turn around here soon. We do want to do some more work on the MusicShare X7. I've been listening to it. I played with changing the 12AX7 front end tube for a EH7025, which is a low noise, little bit lower gain preamp tube. And given that's in a preamp location, it makes sense to use it there. And I'm liking the way that sounds. And I want to play with the 12AU7s. There's some new old socket ones that are in this one. I put some KT88-Z tubes in it. They all biased upgrade. So all those upgrades I've done so far are good. Still going to put the choke and some caps in it. And then next weekend I'm going to do a listening session and compare it to the R8 back to back. So I think that'll be a fun little deal. Maybe I'll do a little on location video recording of that listening session over at my friend Willie's house. That might be fun for you guys to see it, you know, maybe something different than this ugly background. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. So hope you're enjoying my content. I appreciate all you Patreon supporters and folks that have made donations to my website. It really helps me move along with these projects. I haven't forgot about the KT120 monoblocks. They're definitely in the hopper. I just need to get some of these other things, like especially this and the MusicShare back to their owners. And I'm trying to decide whether to do the 6P1 rebuild or the KT120 monoblock. So leave a message in the description which one you want to see next. I've got a good plan for the 6P1 finally, and also got the stuff here to build those KT120 monoblocks. And I think that's going to be a pretty quick build as well. So if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe, please like the video, and we'll see you next week for the Monday monologue.